Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, pretty straightforward. We've got a stack of recent sources, and we're going to unpack the key insights from one single day, August 20th, 2025. And it was quite a day. You saw global and U.S. currents just colliding. We're talking security, weather extremes, public dissent, economic shifts, policy moves. It was packed.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating when you look at a day like this, August 20th, is how these things that seem separate, geopolitics over here, climate impacting things there, the economy doing its thing, they're not isolated at all. They really weave together. It gives you this unique snapshot of what was happening globally and domestically. It shows how interconnected everything is, really.
Right. Okay, let's dive in then. We'll start with the U.S. domestic scene, a real crossroads of politics, policy, and public debate. First up, Washington, D.C. The Trump administration had significantly expanded the police and National Guard presence there. The official reason was citing crime and public disorder, part of a larger law and order push with changes at the Justice Department, too. And on that specific day, August 20th, you had Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visiting Guard troops at Union Station. A very visible moment.
Very visible. And it drew immediate reactions. Protesters were there chanting "Free D.C."
That chant says a lot, doesn't it?
It really does, because you had two clear sides. Supporters saw it as, a necessary step for public safety, but opponents, they called it federal overreach, arguing it trampled on local D.C. autonomy and, well, civil liberties. And interestingly, critics pointed out that some key crime stats were actually trending down around that time.
Even as the administration was talking about a crime wave?
Exactly. So it raises questions about how crime data gets used, especially in election cycles, and that whole federal versus local authority debate.
So, a tense situation in D.C., but these fights over power and representation weren't just in the Capitol. Let's look at Texas. On August 20th, the Texas House approved a new redistricting map. And the design was pretty explicit. Create up to 5 new Republican-leaning seats.
Yeah, that's a big move. It really cranks up the heat on the national battle over representation. And you can bet lawsuits were filed almost immediately, alleging partisan gerrymandering.
Of course.
It feeds into this larger public concern about, the health of U.S. democracy, how voters see these maps, how the courts rule. It's a major test.
And the shaping of political power, it wasn't just about future maps, it was also about the past, about national identity. President Trump ignited a major cultural controversy on the 20th. He instructed lawyers to audit national museums, starting right with the Smithsonian, the goal, to remove exhibits he called woke.
Specifically targeting exhibits on U.S. slavery and racial injustice. The claim was they promoted anti-American ideology.
Wow.
Yeah. And the backlash was instant. Lawmakers, museum professionals, advocacy groups, they accused the administration of trying to, erase difficult parts of American history, especially slavery. But on the flip side, supporters argued it was about restoring patriotic narratives.
And the Smithsonian itself must have been under immense pressure.
Oh, huge pressure, especially with threats, even implicit ones, of federal funding. It just lays bare these incredibly deep partisan divides over how we talk about our own history.
Okay, let's pivot a bit to the economy. Economic independence, industry strategy. On August 20th, President Trump publicly called for Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook to resign.
Right. He brought up these old allegations about past mortgage filings and even pushed for a Justice Department investigation.
That feels like a direct shot at the Fed's independence.
It absolutely does. The dollar actually dipped a bit after those remarks. But the bigger issue, as analysts pointed out, was this challenge to the idea that the Fed should be insulated from day-to-day politics, especially right before Chair Powell's big Jackson Hole speech, which markets always watch closely. It signals, potentially, a more politicized era for monetary policy.
And sticking with economic strategy, something else caught my eye from that day. The U.S. government was looking into taking equity stakes in chip makers. Intel was mentioned first. This was in exchange for the SHICHA PS Act grants, those big subsidies to boost domestic production. Taking ownership stakes, that's unusual.
Highly unusual for the U.S. government, yes.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is you saw some cross-ideological support, like Senator Bernie Sanders arguing taxpayers deserve a return on these huge public investments.
Interesting alignment.
It is. Now, the idea definitely rattled some investors, no doubt. But proponents were arguing, well, maybe this could discipline corporate behavior a bit and better align the company's goals with the national goal of having a secure domestic chip supply. It hints at a potentially different government role in key industries.
Okay, let's broaden our view now. Global flashpoints. Conflicts, cyber threats, diplomacy. quite a bit happened on August 20th, starting in the Middle East. Israel announced a major call-up of reservists, tens of thousands, for an expanded operation in Gaza City called Gideon's Chariots II.
Yeah, significant ground offensive. And this came after some diplomatic sparring. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee had blamed European recognition of Palestinian statehood for stalling ceasefire talks.
What was the immediate impact on the ground?
Devastating. Reports indicated at least 58 Palestinians died just that day from renewed attacks. Hundreds of thousands were ordered to evacuate. It deepened an already horrific humanitarian crisis and widened those diplomatic gaps. The UN, aid groups, they were all sounding the alarm about the consequences.
Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine ground on. On the 20th, Ukrainian officials mentioned progress on the military side of post-war security guarantees with Western advisors.
But Russia's foreign minister basically dismissed those talks immediately, called them a road to nowhere, demanding Russia be directly involved.
So a diplomatic impasse.
A huge one, and reinforced by reality on the ground that same day. New Russian attacks hit civilian areas in Sumy and Odessa. Poland even scrambled jets because of what they call the largest Russian aerial assault in weeks. It just paints this grim picture where the fighting seems set to escalate before any real diplomacy can happen.
And looking elsewhere, the humanitarian crisis in Sudan was also deepening. U.S. mediators on August 20th were described as appalled by the worsening conditions.
It was awful. Yeah. And tragically, that same day, a World Food Program aid convoy's 16 trucks was attacked in North Darfur. Several vehicles were set on fire.
That's terrible. What does that mean for aid getting through?
It's critical. Without guarantees for safe access, without accountability for these attacks, the threat of mass starvation just looms larger and larger. It further destabilizes the whole region.
Okay, shifting from active conflicts to sort of the geopolitical chessboard. The Arctic. On August 20th, Canada launched construction of a new heavy icebreaker, the Polar Max, being built in Finland.
Right. This is aimed squarely at boosting Canada's Arctic sovereignty and defense capabilities. There's growing Russian activity up there.
And it's part of a bigger plan.
Exactly. It falls under the ICE Pact. That's a U.S.-Canada-Finland partnership. It's a direct response to rising tensions, but also, crucially, to climate change. As the ice melts, the Arctic becomes more accessible, more strategic. So climate and geopolitics are totally intertwined there.
And cyber threats remained a major concern. The FBI put out fresh warnings on the 20th about Russian hackers probing U.S. critical infrastructure.
Yeah, reminding everyone of past incidents like the Colonial Pipeline attack.
That really hit home for a lot of people.
It did. And this warning just underscores how these geopolitical conflicts can easily spill into the cyber realm, potentially impacting everything from the power grid to hospitals. It definitely prompts more calls for cybersecurity investment.
Now here's an interesting economic angle on sanctions. India's Nayara Energy, it's partly owned by Russia's Rosneft and was newly sanctioned by the EU. On August 20th, reports emerged they were shifting to a shadow fleet of tankers.
Right. Basically using tankers with obscured ownership or flags to keep Russian oil flowing despite the sanctions.
So sanctions don't always stop the flow.
They often just redirect it, force more clandestine methods. It really highlights India's difficult position trying to balance its energy needs with pressure from international partners trying to isolate Russia economically. A real tightrope walk.
And one more global item. The U.S. decided on August 20th to sanction 2 International Criminal Court judges and 2 prosecutors.
Yeah, this was a major escalation of the U.S. pressure campaign against the ICC, tied to the court's actions regarding Israeli leaders and also past inquiries that involved U.S. personnel.
What's the implication of sanctioning judges?
It sends a pretty strong signal that Washington is willing to use financial weapons against international legal institutions themselves. This likely deepens splits with European allies, many of whom strongly support the ICC's independence, raises big questions about international justice.
All right, let's wrap up with some other global challenges that were in the news on August 20th. Climate, health, and social dynamics. First, climate extremes. Hurricane Erin, the first of the 2025 Atlantic season, was churning offshore on the 20th. No direct landfall predicted then, but warnings were up for the Outer Banks.
Right. Dangerous storm surge, tropical storm conditions expected. And it immediately brought back those warnings about climate change, making hurricanes intensify faster and pushing higher surges ashore. Puts the focus back on coastal resilience, preparedness.
And on the other side of the Atlantic, massive wildfires in Spain. Officials said on the 20th they were finally getting a handle on them thanks to humidity rising.
But not before they'd burned an area nearly equivalent to Spain's entire wildfire total for 2024. Just staggering.
And linked to the heat waves.
Directly. Scientists keep making the connection between these intense southern European heat waves and human-driven climate change. It sparked renewed debates there about adapting cities to heat, needing more resilient infrastructure.
Turning to public health now, U.S. measles cases were on the rise. The CDC updated the numbers on August 20th, and states like Idaho were reporting new cases among unvaccinated kids.
Yeah, signs of broader community spread, as they put it. It's worrying because measles was eliminated in the U.S. back in 2000.
Eliminated, wow.
Yeah, but vaccination rates dipped, particularly during the pandemic years. And measles is just so contagious that even a small drop in MMR coverage allows these outbreaks. Big implications for schools, healthcare systems.
And a different kind of movement, a story from Guatemala on the 20th. The government gave temporary humanitarian status to 161 Mexicans.
Right, they were fleeing escalating cartel violence in Chiapas, just across the border.
What does that signify?
It's a small snapshot, but it points to ongoing regional instability, the pressures of forced migration, and these cross-border security issues. Just another facet of the humanitarian challenges in that region.
Okay, two final items showing societal shifts. First, Egypt took a big step in digital finance on August 20th. Approval for Mr.'s digital innovation to rebrand as One Bank.
Yes. Poised to be the country's first digital-only bank, launching in 2026.
Who are they targeting?
Primarily underserved and remote communities. Over 60% of Egyptians are still unbanked. So this is a major push for financial inclusion, boosting the whole fintech sector there, modernization.
And lastly, in Thailand, also on the 20th, the central bank brought in new rules capping daily digital money transfers for certain groups.
Yeah, a 50,000 baht limit for what they called vulnerable groups, aimed at tackling online financial fraud.
How did people react?
There was definitely some public anxiety initially, fears about access.
Yeah.
The Bank of Thailand had to clarify it would only affect specific customer profiles. It shows that balancing act, wanting modern financial protection but not wanting to hinder access for ordinary people.
Wow, okay. Stepping back and looking at all that from just one day, August 20th. It's incredible. National Guard patrols, hurricane warnings, redistricting fights, global diplomacy, tech shifts. It's such a rich, complex picture.
It really is. And this deep dive, I think, powerfully shows how things like geopolitical tension, climate change, economic pressures, they aren't separate silos. They constantly intersect and converge, often within a single 24-hour news cycle, shaping our world in real time. It's all connected.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how these specific events we talked about, the government may be taking a bigger stake in industry like chips, or citizens pushing back on representation, or these global challenges hitting home, how they hint at these much longer term shifts, trends that will definitely be with us long after August 20th is forgotten.
So the question for you listening might be, what do these disparate events from just one day suggest to you about where things are heading, about the larger forces at play, globally and domestically? And maybe, how does understanding these connections help you think about and perhaps prepare for what might come next?